Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of USkTalks. This is Rob coming to you live from Hong Kong. Another day, another episode connecting sketchers couch to couch. And if you check out mine, it looks particularly noisy today because, I'm not sure if you're aware, it is Chinese Lunar New Year. And it's also Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to you all. Thank you for being my date, hanging out with us. We all appreciate that. And of course, happy Chinese Lunar New Year as well. If you speak Cantonese, 恭喜發財,身體健康, which is wishes for prosperity. What is it? What is an Asian festival if it's not wishing you prosperity? And of course, wishing you good health as well. So let's take a look in the comments. It's like my favorite way to start the show, to check out, see who's tuning in from where. We've got Lady Lagabi Gaga. For a second, I thought, wow, Lady Gaga is watching from USK Lanzarote. Ooh, very interesting. Hey, hi, Karen from LA, Virginia. Hello. So good to see you all. Anne-Marie from Albuquerque. Let's see, from Sao Paulo, from Stockholm as well. Hello, from Lisbon. I see. Oh, hi, Karina from Stockholm. TM6057 from Hungary. Vivian from San Francisco. Yara. Oh, Rohit's with us all the way from India, from Bengaluru. Di Metcalf from Cape Town. So, from Italy, from all over. Oh, so good to. So thank you all for joining us. Okay, so my question to start the show off is, do you draw inspiration? I'm sure you draw inspiration from lots of urban sketches. You're going through Instagram, Facebook, and all that, checking out other urban sketches. But today's episode is all about visual storytelling and ways to draw inspiration from other sources. So tell me, which of these three sources do you get your inspiration from? The movies, comics, or sequential art, or animation? So quickly, just tell me really quick. Hello from the Netherlands. Hey, hi. From Reunion Island. Hello. So tell me really quick, do you get inspiration for your urban sketching from the movies, from comics, or from animation? Any of those three? Because we'll be touching on those. And I'm just curious to see which influence all of you. Anne-Marie, first up, saying movies. Thank you. Very cool. More movies. Okay, we got lots of movie fans. Anybody here who's got a thing for sequential art? By the way, if you did not know that, I learned to draw from copying comic books. So Spider-Man was my teacher for dynamic poses, and the Hulk and Superman taught me anatomy, that kind of thing. And then all of them gave me an idea of what storytelling's all about. Okay. All right. So got lots of great responses. Thank you all so much. First up, then, it is time to invite our first guest all the way from Stockholm. If you don't know, her name is Nina. She is an educator. She's an instructor. She's also a really nice friend. I'm very happy to say that I know both our guests this time, Nina and Pedro, personally. And they're wonderful people. They're going to give you lots of awesome ideas on how to capture characters and bring drama and emotion and action to your work. Okay, let's call up and pull up Nina to our stream. Hello, Nina. How are you? You're looking so good. I mean, that's such a nice festive little scarf that you got there.
Thank you.
You're fitting in festive vibe really well. So I'm happy Lunar New Year to you.
Oh, you too.
Yeah, we wish you an amazing year ahead. It is a Chinese year of the ox, so I don't know. I mean, for some people, the ox, the bull or the cow is a stubborn thing, but I think this animal has got some things to teach urban sketchers. Okay. Let's jump right in. Nina, maybe for those who are in the audience and who don't know you very well, could you just give us a quick introduction? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, so Nina Johansson. I live in Stockholm, and I teach illustration and freehand drawing and graphic design at Mälardalen University in Eskilstuna. So I basically do what I think is fun at work too. So it's a good thing. Yeah. And I draw, of course. I've been drawing all my life.
Course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I've followed your work for some time now, and I'm such a huge fan. And for those of you who would like to check out Nina's work, that's her handle on Instagram. Please go take a look. So, Nina, let's get diving into some of your incredible work. I mean, you have this illustrative quality it's delicate at the same time. It's descriptive. You've got the storytelling in your lines. I mean, how did you come about? Let's give us the quick idea of how you discovered urban sketching.
Oh, I was already out sketching a lot in the city where I live, and everywhere. I've been sketching, since I was a kid, and of course in 2008, Gabby contacted me and asked, because a lot of people were having blogs online where you post your images, and he saw mine and say, hey, do you want to join us? We're a couple of people starting up a blog here because we're doing the same thing all over the world, it seems. So that's how urban sketching was introduced to me. So that was really nice. So suddenly you find yourself having a family who are doing the same things, and I didn't even have to look for them. I just arrived.
There. Yeah, we're all over the world now.
Yeah.
That is an amazing thing. It's this community. And you were saying that you've been drawing since childhood. Were you like drawing from life as well?
Not from the beginning, I think, but say from my early teens, I started, discovering this, that it was kind of more fun than I did what everybody else does. So you copy your idols from photos and all that stuff. But then I started finding it more interesting to draw what I saw around me. So.
And I've seen from your work, I mean, I remember at a couple of symposiums, we sat down like a whole bunch of people over dinner, and then the sketchbooks go around, and you have these large format books that you kind of work with, and it's riveting, just paging through. And it's like, like for those of you who haven't seen, if you've had an opportunity to check Nina's sketchbooks out, you know what I mean. But it's like a coffee table book that's real. It comes to life. Every page, the composition is different, and the colors that you use, and the way you tell your stories. And I love how you bring the story like so eloquently across the pages. So tell me what some of your influences are. Where did you pick up this skill? How do you hone it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, now I've started thinking, as you said, we're going to be talking a bit about inspiration from movie making, but I think I'm always inspired by what I see, and I like to sort of combine it on the page to make it less, I want variation, sort of, and if I can weave it into some kind of a story, or like the example you're showing now, it's more like panels, almost like comic style. I like that because you can vary yourself a lot instead of just, I mean, I like single pages of one place too, but it's kind of fun to start weaving out from there. And inspiration from that, anywhere really, life. I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a great broad answer, but I'm sure lots of viewers are going to want to know, like, how do you zero in? Like these pages, for instance, I love how like it's traveling. It's about traveling, but the just the colors and the composition, gives you a suggestion of like from freeway, flying down a freeway to like the difference in fall colors, and then after that, little country lanes and stuff you can find there. That's amazing how you bring us through the image. So speaking of pathways, also, this is such a cool sketch.
Good. So this is where I started like last autumn, because I've been working from home, which a lot of people are doing now. And I haven't had any guests at home, and I don't visit people, with Corona and everything. So you have to start finding inspiration closer. I mean, traveling is always fun. That car trip was really great, and I wasn't driving, so I could I could use the time for doing. But now, I mean, there are little stories you can tell from home as well. I sit in my living room working a lot, and you just have to do something with that. That's a story too. And in hindsight, it's going to be quite interesting. Oh, you remember those years when we were sitting in the living room working? That's going to be funny. Or like a story worth telling. That's what I'm thinking. And so this is my walk from, I go get coffee in the kitchen every now and then, and during my days. And so I try to. This is where I started thinking, like, so how would you do this in a movie? Well, you could put your camera on, like what do you call those little, like dolly. With wheel, dolly, and then you would like zoom in through the room. You would follow. So what if I do that on paper? That's going to be tougher because you only have one surface to tell this, so you have to choose what to draw and what not to draw, and the angles and everything as you move. So I just move like 3 steps at a time, and then. So what do I capture here? And then move a few steps more, and
Fantastic. We're going to dive more into that. So more examples to come. But let's take a look at a few more of your sketches where you're documenting things at home.
Yeah.
And like you've got this particular thing of overlapping elements. Tell us what that's about.
Yeah. So that's what happens. That's one of the tricky parts with moving through space and trying to document it on paper, I think, because you have to choose what to draw. And then as you move forward, you realize that, okay, I'll have to draw this object once more because it's still there, but it's a slightly different angle. So like the coffee table, for instance, is there twice, but from different angles. And some things are going to overlap when you get the problem with, so which one do I show most clearly and which one do I subdue a bit, because there's so many layers. So this image got a bit messy because I'm still trying things out with this, but I think it's really fun, and it's like a real challenge too. But I can see that it's our home, definitely, but it's a bit like weird. Everything is woven into each other, all the things there. So but it's kind of cool.
I'm really enjoying this element that you're bringing into the conversation of camera angles and points of view and that sort of thing. Like this is another example where you take us through what I assume is your lunch walk over an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
33 kilometers and the views that you see. So how do you decide like which bit you're going to do when and
For this walk, I've walked it so many times. I know which places I think are most interesting because, the church up the top right corner is kind of special. It's a church from the 60s, so it's a bit cool architecture. And then the amphitheater and the subway going across there on a bridge. But also, this is kind of cool because in my head, this walk is. I have to show you. I hope this will. If I keep my sketchbook like this, I'm going to draw it here on the surface. Then in my head, this walk that I do, it goes around. I walk out and I turn left everywhere. So it's like a circle, and then I'm back home. So do I start at the bottom right? That's what happens in my head, and I go around. But we read from top left, right, and go down towards the right corner. So then, should I start as it is in my head, or should I start top right and make it a logical reading order? It's really fun to play with that. So this one starts at the lower right corner, which is totally unlogical in the way we read in the West. So that's, so I had to make little signs there, out. This is the way out. And then I go around. So this follows the map more than it follows the reading direction. So it's like you can play with that, which is kind of fun, actually.
And it is still, it's fun to read that. And then when the viewer, the reader catches on, like, oh, this is the method that you use, there's a little click, like, oh, that's so cool, and makes everything all the more fun too. Okay, so tell us what this is about, because this is interesting as we go more into how do you depict something that is, changing of space.
Yeah, so the last one you saw, the messy image of our living room, that was like moving a few steps, drawing the situation you have around you, then moving some steps more. And so this is more like trying to imitate a dolly, like the camera is on a dolly and going forward. So I have a little animation to show. So first, I'm way back, drawing what I see through the hallway into the living room. And then as I move forward, I try to do the whole scene again in just a little more contrast in the pen. And this gets messy because it gets layers, but that's what I aimed for too. So I think it's kind of fun to play with.
Yeah.
And so you can decide which layer is the most visible by deciding which one is black, and the other can be like more subdued. Maybe it's cool to play with.
That is a very fun exercise. I think it's great for training the eye as well as playing with compositions.
Yeah.
And yes, and I see a comment Joy, yes, this is digital. This is Procreate on the iPad Pro.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from Joy also. So did she draw this on site all within 70 minutes or later? Let's see. I assume that you're talking about the one on the lunch walk, 70 minutes, because 1 hour is something.
Yeah.
This piece.
Yeah, that was the 3 kilometers is not very far, and I drew the ink drawing within that time. 1 hour and 10 minutes is quite a slow walk. So,
and Nina is obviously really good. The limited color palette helps too.
Yeah, and I only had like one colored pencil with me to add just a few things, and then I added a little more at home. But I kept it really just one color, a subdued color scale. So not a lot of colors to make it a little less messy, because learning from the living room sketch where everything is just very colorful, that's more messy to work with.
This unites the composition really nicely. Now, diving deeper into camera angles, let's take a look at this one and what you like us to pay attention to when we watch movies that we enjoy.
Yeah, so from movies, I think it's kind of cool to think how are they using the camera to tell the story. So this is from one of my favorite movies, Blade Runner, the old Blade Runner, where they show you an establishing shot, the top one, which is like, okay, we understand we're in a city, big city, probably a bit polluted, and then we're also in the future. Of course, there's a text before this telling you that we're in the future, but there are cars flying in the air here. So we sort of get the premises that this is in a town, big city, and we're in the future because there are no flying cars now. And then they zoom in a bit to this huge building. So we get it that, okay, there's something's going to happen in here. And then you zoom in through a window almost. I mean, there are time cuts in between these, of course. And we get that, okay, so now we're in some kind of an office, there's a ceiling fan, and there's this guy. So the story will begin. So we're like introduced with an establishing shot, like you travel into the scene and you land somewhere where you're actually gonna see something happen.
Yeah, from like really wide, coming in a little closer, a little tighter, and what happens next. And I love how you apply this to urban sketching. So have a look, people. This is so cool.
A little less dramatic than Blade Runner, but still.
But Please, yeah,
And-
explain this.
Yeah, so this is just one of my walks, almost the same one that I drew in the earlier sketch there. So first you have an establishing shot at the top, and then further down the page is actually me tilting the camera, if we call it that when we're sketching, tilting the camera upwards. So I'm looking up into a tree because there were a lot of magpies flying around there doing their whatever they do. And so you get the tree in front of the building, and then I tilt all the way up so that I have the sky behind this branch. And so it's kind of the same. I think you can pick from movies the way they use the camera to sequence the story. And then try to do it on the same page.
Oh, yeah, it's very cool. And the way you've done like an organic bit, like with the sky, and the way you've blended all together. Like,
could you try again?
Keep quiet. Siri's like interrupting me. Sorry. Keep quiet, Siri. All right, next one. This is another great way that you've used these little vignettes within a sketch to tell this tale of one of your travel sketches, I assume?
Yeah.
Oh, so
traveling west through Sweden.
So cool. All right. And look, I love how when we zoom out, I mean, we can see that you're in the car doing all these sketches. So everything was done during the travel time?
Yeah. I added extra layers of watercolors afterwards, but otherwise it was done in the car. And because it's a long trip, I mean, it's like 4.5 hours. And again, I was lucky enough to not be the driver during this trip. So I could spend my time drawing. But this is kind of actually the same thought as there's an establishing shot. In movies, the establishing shot is usually like a wide shot or a long shot where you get the whole environment, and then you zoom into where the action is. In this case, the establishing shot is actually the background because we're in a car. That's what you need to know what these panels are about. Otherwise, they would be landscape paintings, I guess. But now they are parts of the trip. They're what we see through the windshield. So that's like another way you can take inspiration from the movies, that you put the establishing shot as the background. And then, of course, I drew the rectangles first. I knew I wanted to draw some views along the trip. So I drew those first and then sketched the car behind there. And
okay. I'm just amazed that you could do all this while sitting in the passenger's seat. I think the driver must be incredibly very steady, because just like a sketch also, it's so controlled.
Yeah. But it looks better like this than when you zoom in and look very closely. But still, it works.
It all works together. It all works together, and it's very cool. Okay. Tell us what's happening here for this one.
Yeah, so then there's also in movies, you have a different, there's so many things you can pick from movies. I only have a few examples here, but this is like a point of view camera. So you can have, like in a movie, you can have a camera just watching the action. That's when the camera is objective. It's standing there, but it's not part of the action. It just films it, right? Records it. But then you can also put the camera in the eyes of one of the characters in the movie. So often in like thrillers or so, you have, you suddenly know as a viewer that you're in the eyes of the criminal spying behind a tree like this, and you just know that, gosh, now he's on to her or whatever, and so I was trying that. Like, what if I do that as a sketcher? I have the camera here, which we always do, of course, when we sketch, but then I can start like moving around an object and drawing it in sequences like this, which I thought was kind of fun to play with. So these are just two examples. It's a little taxidermy. This is not a living bird. It's an old taxidermy specimen.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was drawing. Yeah. So I could decide how to turn it around.
Okay. I thought you had a bird or something.
Yeah. And the lower part is a classic toy, Brio dachshund, that I also just turned around. And you can draw the whole thing in in this sequence, or you can choose parts because otherwise it gets very messy. But it's kind of a fun way to. That's something I aim to keep playing with because it's kind of because I'm not out in the town so much drawing right now because it's cold and I work during the day, and when I stop working, it's dark outside. So that's living up in the north. It's like you have this little disadvantage of light in the winter. Still.
And that just forces us to get a little bit creative what we can draw and stories we can tell indoors at home. Yeah. Okay, that was incredibly enlightening, and we're going to have you back. Hang on, folks. We're going to get Nina back in a bit when we have Pedro and Nina together, and we'll be discussing more. And then you can please ask lots of questions, and we'll dive in deeper. Okay, thank you very much, Nina. We will have you back in just a little bit. See you soon. Okay, up next, we'll be inviting Pedro from Lisbon. Hello, Pedro. How are you?
Hi. All good here. How are you?
Oh, good. So it's so good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. It's so good to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You who are wanting to check Pedro's stuff out. I mean, he's also an educator. He's a prolific sketcher. This is his Instagram handle. Please go check him out. So, just before we jump into all your incredible work as well, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, and an idea of your urban sketching journey.
All right. So my name is Pedro Loureiro. I'm based in, and this is hard for me to say as well, Pedro Loureiro. There's a lot of consonants and blah, blah, blah. And I come from, I'm in Lisbon, Portugal. I originally come from the south of the country, very sunny, very beach-like. And yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And I already saw a few comments from people down there. So hello to them. Hello, everybody. And so I've been sketching since, I've been sketching forever, like probably most of us. But like with small interruption during my teen years, my adolescent years, because I was interested in other things, different things. And I got back to sketching like around 2000 in my 20s when I enrolled in architecture school. I'm a trained architect. I used to work as an architect, but not anymore. And now I work as an architectural illustrator, which is fun because it's like sketching all day long. And when I take breaks, I also sketch. So it's a pretty boring life. It's just sketching.
Not at all. If you can sketch and draw for a living, good on you.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
It inspires lots of people.
And what else? What else can I say? So I started sketching pretty many years ago. Mm-hmm. I joined Urban Sketchers here in Portugal around 2010, which was 1 year before the symposium, and it's actually the Lisbon Symposium. I mean, and it's actually quite it's a happy moment. It's good to be Nina's Valentine in this Urban Sketchers. Because it's a serendipity that she happened to be the first instructor the first international instructor that I had. So I attended her workshop. She was the first non-Portuguese instructor that I had in the symposium.
Ah, okay.
And, it's been a journey ever since, like non-stop sketching and
Fantastic. Okay, so Nina obviously has drawn quite a bit of inspiration from films and movies and stuff. What about you? What's really been your influence in terms of storytelling, and what kind of things do you bring into your work?
Well, comics, of course. Comics. I'm always super excited to talk about comics because I haven't met a lot. Strangely enough, I haven't met a lot of sketchers who are comic buffs, who are comic fans. I think you are included in that small bunch.
A tiny comic fan. Yes, I'm not very, very well read but yes, I certainly am. I mean, that's how I was introduced to art.
Yeah, and that was pretty much my sketching school because I didn't have a lot of classes in art. I didn't attend art school. I was into sciences in high school. And then my life shifted to architecture, but there wasn't a lot of sketching at least in my course. So I didn't do a lot of sketching. I only did sketching because I was interested in. So that was because I read a lot of comics in my early years, in my childhood and my teen years, and because my father had a huge collection of comics, mostly European stuff.
Okay.
And then I only found out about comics, American comics and Japanese comics in my 30s, I guess, in my early 30s. So I mainly focus on the European stuff like Tintin and Lucky Luke and Corto Maltese, Hugo Pratt and all that. So there was a lot to learn from those guys. And yeah, like you were saying yourself, I mostly learned how to sketch by copying comic books. And then later by inventing stories and all that.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to start. Also because it gets you started on it's without pushing. You understand this is how stories unfold, and that's something that urban sketchers can definitely bring into their work and draw inspiration from. So speaking of work, let's take a look at some of the stuff that you've done and talk us through it. Talk us through how comics and sequential art have started to play a role in your work.
Well, like you said, it was very organic, because when you start, it's like learning a language. When you start sketching when you start copying from comics and reading comics from an early age, you don't actually notice what effect it has on you until you have to start talking about it. So I had to do a deep dive in my own mind to find out what exactly do I take from comics to do the sketches that I do today. And most of the sketches, I think Nina's examples are a better way of sequential, are better examples in sequential art, the sketches that you showed of her. But mine are a little bit more like, okay, what comics has transpired or perspired into these. And one of the things which I find interesting is perspective. Like how perspective is. So this is like a 3-point perspective, or a 3-point vanishing point perspective, where this was during filming. I was sketching the making of a filming of a live program, and so I kind of composition wise, I was closer to the photographers and to the video to the people that were filming. So the presenter of the show actually is really small, so it gets really less important. So I was focusing my attention more on the people that were working behind the cameras. So that's kind of a fun way of doing it. And just by a simple perspective, by using a simple perspective.
By exaggerating the perspective a little bit and all that, then you can play out the hero and the sub characters. So
yeah, exactly. And this happened because I was sitting down. If I was standing up, it wouldn't be so dramatic, but it just happened this way, and I enjoyed the result.
Yeah, and I think it would be really interesting. Sorry. No, I was just thinking that because you're a really tall guy. Those of you who know Pedro, he's tall. And maybe it feels that way also because I'm short. But Pedro, I think because from this point of view, you're your eye level is around the chest of a lot of the people who are standing up. But it'd be so interesting to just compare the perspectives, from this point of view, you're sitting down, you're drawing, and then you stand up. And
then I start drawing the heads, the huge heads and the small feet.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit like Lapin does as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. This is a little bit another example of this perspective, because I was sitting down and my girlfriend and this friend of mine were out in the window smoking. But what I take away from this is the drama effects of the nights. It was night outside, and it's just like a plain, simple city, very peaceful cityscape. But I kind of used the colors in the way that I wanted the light and the brightness of the flame to be a feature of the sketch. So I kind of started messing around with colors, and the effect is much more dramatic. So you can actually add a little bit of drama to it, and I'm a little bit of a drama queen when I'm sketching, so I kind of add just a little bit of extra drama to it. This kinds of feel like film noir sort of scene.
Right.
In a way.
Yes. Using color, yeah,
Yeah.
to give a feel for. I like this perspective as well. I mean, I see that you use a lot of people in your work, and I'm always a fan of that because, I mean, there's been a study that human beings are drawn to images with faces in them because we're drawn to other faces. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating for me to see when you draw a crowd and that particular emotion that you're capturing there. So
it's true that people have always been my favorite subject to sketch, probably because of this past with the comic book. And but one of the takeaway, the greatest takeaway I have from this sketch is it's something that's going on in comics as well, which is one sketch is not telling the story of a moment; it's telling the story of a period of time, whether it's like 2 seconds or like 10 minutes or half an hour, which is probably this sketch. How long it took me to make this sketch. So all these people are not like this at the same time. This is kind of obvious for the sketcher crowd, but it never goes. You should always underline this. It's that this is more like this is not as much as a photography. It's more like a movie
that's true.
or a film, because all these people are in different time slots.
Right.
In a way, and that happens a lot in comic book panels, where you have like one panel that's describing like 2 or 3 actions at the same time, but they're like spaced out like 10 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, it's a sequence of characters over a period of time.
Yeah,
and
all in the same panel.
Right, all in the same panel. So it's an encapsulation of that time. And I think
you make it work. Being a sketcher, you make it work altogether.
That's true, and I think that's a particular talent of sketchers themselves to be able to capture that, because you can't possibly draw everyone who's there in that particular moment in time. So it's
you choose.
Yeah. You choose.
You collect. That's the important thing. It's like the choice that you make. Okay, I have to include this person and this person and this person, or this expression and this expression. So like the smiles or the quirks or the facial expressions, you have to select one of the 20 that you've seen from that person.
Right.
And you do that, and the sketch becomes something else.
It comes alive, and the story comes across. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This has got such atmosphere.
This picks up a little bit on what we were talking about in the previous one. This was like a street demonstration a few years ago, like 4 years ago, I think, in downtown Lisbon. People were being evicted from buildings because high rents and all that, So the people from this building got together and started making a party and demonstration/party. And the thing about this is that, again, all these people were not sketched at the same time. This took like half an hour. So all these people were just walking around and talking to each other in different positions. So I just had to pick a few of them to tell the whole story. I had to pick a few of them, the ones that would be most relevant to telling this story. And all of them, if you can focus, if you have like a tiny frame, a tiny paper frame, and you can focus on different actions along the pages and along the spreads, you can actually tell mini stories in the whole thing, in the whole different story, in the whole combined story.
I totally understand, because it's like if you look at different corners, there's a collection of different things that are happening. And if you look at that, that's a mini story with this group and that group, and all together they make this big scene.
Yeah, and happening at different times. So this is if this is not sequential art, I don't know what it is.
That's true too.
It's kind of like I'm reminded of. It's kind of like if fiction film is comics, then urban sketching is documentary. Does this make sense?
Yes, I like that. I love that. I love that analogy, and that's so true. So, like in this, for instance, you're using each page as a panel for the story.
Yeah. This was a fun moment. This was I was sketching the final exam of makeup artists of a makeup artist school. So this was the final exam they were all girls, I think. So I was sketching individually what was going on in each table, in each post. And what I like especially about this is the framing. So the framing on the right sides, the framing, I used the mirror to frame it and have a sequential sequence of events in the same image with 3 different planes, so to speak.
Right. Yes. You've got
Filtering out everything else, which is also something that comic book artists tend to do. They use frames. They use the natural frames or the frames that are in the image to frame their own work.
Yeah, and that is certainly something that any urban sketcher can learn from and get inspiration from. Yeah. It just gives the whole sketch like a good frame makes such a difference to composition.
Yeah, and especially what you filter out. If you select things that are going to be featured and things that don't matter so much to the story, then you filter them out, and bam, you have a story, a focused story.
I hope you're all taking notes, people. There are lots of nuggets that are liberally sprinkled through this talk, so take notes.
Also, sorry, Rob, can you just back up a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because this is quite this is a little bit of a homage to my favorite author, my favorite comic book author, which is Hugo Pratt. I have a book of him here.
Okay, hang on. And let me pull you up full screen so that everyone can see that. Yes.
Okay. This is in Portuguese, but anyway, it's this. Whoops, sorry. This guy here. This is the character, and this is the author. Hugo Pratt. He's an Italian Venetian was an Italian Venetian author. And the shading, his shading, sorry, just let me show you here. He has awesome shading, and just this shadow here, and these dramatic shadows, they're accomplished by ink only. It's like just a stroke of ink, which was what I was aiming with that makeup sketching. So a lot of the shadows of the shadow work in faces that I've learned throughout the years, it's mostly through this guy, mostly through comics and mostly through this guy. So this is a good example of that.
Okay, I do like that dramatic shading that you've got in comic books as well, because this is an example. Like, I don't use ring lights because I have a round flat face and I would just look like a pizza. So that's why my light is on the side, because then there is a little bit of definition.
And you have a lot more drama. You have a lot more drama. You have like a brush stroke here or here.
That's right. Something to think about if you're going to do my portrait. Thank you. There are lots of sketches like to do a lot of portraits from the shows. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more into some of the other bits that you've drawn from comics and what we can learn from them.
So here on this side, on the left side of the spread, you can see that there's my man Pedro Alves. This is my co-worker. He is also an USK instructor, and he's an illustrator like me. We work together on this. So this is my standard approach to sketching people, like line work and everything. And this is my girlfriend, and in a manga style. This is where I became interested in Japanese comics. Very late in life. Very late in life, I have to confess. But I think it's the best way, or at least for me, it's the best way to learn. It's to lose yourself in the style, or lose yourself in one inspiration. You don't try to be yourself, or try to refrain from being yourself and completely imitate another style, or completely imitate another author, and learn from him or her, and then just incorporate it into your own style. So I was just like trying manga stuff, just to see how my art could change, how my sketching could change in a way.
That's fascinating, yes, and that's true. That's something I think. I didn't go to art school, but I heard that you do need to, when you copy the work of someone, or you step into the shoes of an artist and try to think from their point of view, like you analyze why they do something particular way, and then after that, there are lots of takeaways that we we can bring with us in our own artistic journeys. So,
It's kind of a Buddhist thing. You lose your identity, and you try to just try to be someone else for a change, and see what you can learn from it. In sketching, I mean.
yeah, sketching. Okay, and this is this looks totally different. I mean, compared to what you did before. But,
and then you have because then you have to adjust your style and your tools to the context. So this is an Aikido class. A friend of mine took me to sketch an Aikido class, and these people were just moving around, it was impossible to capture just one still frame. So I just drew out my brush pen and just started, spontaneously trying to capture the movement. And this is also something that if you cannot capture a single frame, you just have to mess it up a little bit so that it becomes like diffuse. And comic book artists also use that a lot. Like they diffuse the action scenes in a way. So change of style according to the context.
Yeah,
and according to the story that you're telling.
Makes good sense. All right. And
okay, this is a fun one. So now I'm getting more into watercolor, like classic watercolor, because we're stuck at home and we have to explore different things. And this was the moment this transition is the moment that the quarantine started, the pandemic started and the quarantine started. So the left one was done in an Aquarius, large Aquarius that we have here in Lisbon, the Oceanarium, and there's a few birds, like a few seabirds stuck in like a habitat. Habitat. Okay. And a few days later, I started sketching in quarantine already. I started sketching my front building neighbors, and they're also stuck like in a kind of a cage, a habitat of their own. So that's rocker guy with a guitar under his arm in the balcony, just enjoying the sun and enjoying a few songs. So this is also like how you can juggle things thematically, which comic book is all. Just take a theme and just bring it across the spreads.
Fantastic, love that. Another great idea. Okay, here we go. Here's another pattern across a sketch. Yep.
So this is also an example on how you can do a tiny turnaround on reality. Of course, we urban sketchers sketch from reality and from what do we see. And I was actually seeing this. So this was in a truck stop, on the way from Lisbon to Madrid, and all the truckers were stopping there for lunch. This was like midday, and they were all sitting in individual tables looking at the TV. But I conveniently left the TV out of the frame on the left, and just ended up the sketch in that weird portrait it was like a weird cheesy portrait of a young man, like a kid, like 10, 11 years old, all dressed up. It was like a really cheesy photo. I think it was like one of those black and white photos that they paint over with a golden frame and some golden fishes on. So it just feels like that those truckers are just watching the painting. You can kind of distort. If you cannot sketch from fiction, at least you distort reality in the way that it becomes a little bit of fiction and makes you have fun.
Yeah, it's a kind of like playing connect the dots kind of thing, and leaving some dots to the audience to figure out, because that makes it interesting.
Yeah,
I really like how you use the space as well. You leave all that white and just
leave it for the imagination. Leave it for the imagination. Every audience is going to see your sketch in a different way. Pretty much as watching a movie or looking through a comic book, of course. So
interpretation.
Yeah, this was again my front building neighbors. They're in quarantine. A lot of the neighbors started using the balconies a little bit more, and this was a challenge presented by an urban sketcher from Portugal. I think we were challenging each other back then in that month or in those couple of months. So every week there was a challenge. Every week there was a challenge to try to create. I think the challenge here was try to create a museum of the things you have at home or something like that, or try to And I just thought of creating the interpretative center of the front door and of the front building neighbor. So you have like all the neighbors displayed, and again, these aren't sketched at the same time, and these I just mashed them up, a little bit like Nina shows on her sketches. It's a mashup of the building.
Yeah.
Which is
this sort of what comes to mind is like if your neighborhood was a zoo, and everybody was, you know,
and there was all these stories just across the streets, you know.
Right. Okay.
Who's mingling with who? Who is bringing the boyfriend home? Or
right.
who is watering the plants? You know.
Yeah.
There's all these stories.
Again, yeah, telling stories is just your point of view. There's always something. I remember this. I remember reading this as it was a proposal. It was a workshop that you offered at the Porto Symposium, right?
It was in Porto, yeah. The
Tell
workshop.
people what it's such a great way to look at things.
This is kind of preparation. It was a preparation sketch for the workshop, where the basic idea was like sketching a perspective, sketching a whole street view, only picking up on public realm objects, so like street posts, traffic lights, fountains, bus stops, and everything. And it's funny how if you filter out everything, suddenly these objects become characters on their own rights. So this kind of feels like there's a sequential story around here. I just don't know how to pinpoint it, but there's some personality into these objects when you filter the rest, all the rest. So this just goes to show you that you don't have to sketch people to have characters in your story. In a way.
I think so. I think that it's a really great idea to think of an inanimate object as a character, and telling the story of that character from your point of view or their point of view, trying to just look at something real different.
There was really interesting stories that from the participants in those workshops.
Okay,
people really committed to their objects.
I remember thinking I would love to take that workshop, but the timing was not right. So I hope that comes up again. I get another chance.
Hope so.
Okay. Some people are asking, Joy, I did say if your neighborhood was a zoo, not a Zoom. Zoom is another kind of zoo, like a fish tank with all of us swimming in little separate containers. But that balcony thing I was talking about is sometimes, look at people walking around. It's like a different kind of zoo. Okay, this is a really mysterious thing to start off with this official seal and all that. Let's show everybody what the rest of the sketch looks like.
All right, so this is in St. Petersburg, and it's the doorway to the corner building where Dostoevsky lived last. So he died in this house, and my girlfriend is a big Dostoevsky fan, so we had to do the whole Dostoevsky route when we were there in St. Petersburg, and this is another way in how to try to fictionalize your sketches a little bit. So you have the building, you have the Dostoevsky museum, and then you filter everything out except for a few cars just for context, and then you add someone, and then I added that person that was just walking by, and you kind of sense, is he Dostoevsky or is he not Dostoevsky? He does have a beard, he is kind of bald, so is he Dostoevsky? No, but it's actually like urban sketching, because that guy was just walking by. It was walking past when I was finishing the sketch. Just goes to show you how framing and filtering out can really tell a story, and that's a device that a lot of comic book artists do. They just filter out pieces of I don't need to sketch this because it's totally unnecessary for the story. I'll just focus on the character and the building that is going to end.
Yeah, and there's so much drama from just the white space that you've left as well. So really nicely done. So mysterious.
Yeah.
You're setting up
a secret agent, like we were mentioning before.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Like it's in St. Petersburg. It looks like an illustration for a story, but a good urban sketch also gives you that feel of drama.
Yeah, I like that. I like that people take different conclusions from the sketches that I do.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Tell us what's happening here.
It's a little bit of what's happening. So the focus is more on the right-hand side, the left-hand side. This is in Rome. It's in the Palatino Hill, and you can see how like all of what we were talking about before comes together on this sketch. It's like you have like a massive building, like 3-point perspective building, like gigantic, and there are 2,000 years of history between us and that building. And then you have these two tiny girls in the corner, and they're just struggling to take a selfie or they were trying to make a video call or something like that, and we're happy, smiling and giggling and everything. So it's like the contrast, if you can find contrasts, if you can find like some narrative contrast to your sketch, that just makes my day. Like it's a joy to watch contrasting themes in the same sketch.
Well, thank you for telling us that, because one of my questions was what sort of things you draw on to, or you look for in a scene that brings that storytelling element to your sketch. So contrast for sure.
Contrast for sure. Diagonals. I use diagonals a lot, just to direct the eye. Yeah, exactly. Like this is a good example. Also, the previous one was a good example. So diagonals, just to keep your eyes wandering about, like if you were reading a comic book, like you read from left to right, or from like whatever, however the page is composed, and you keep the eyes just going about. In a comic book, time is very important, because it's like, I think it's the only specific thing to comic books, comic book narratives, that it is time, and like the reader controls the time. In a movie, you don't do that unless you pause, of course. And the book, you kind of do, but you're just reading and reading. If you stop reading, the immersion kind of stops. But if you stop reading, leafing through in the sketchbook, in the sketchbook as well as in the comic book, you can just delve on the details. Okay, I just want to spend a little bit more time. I know the action is really quick, but I just want to spend a little bit more time on this page, so you can just like appreciate all the details, or appreciate the. So yes.
And as the author, so to speak, I mean, you're like, if you're the comic book artist, you're telling that story. You're the author of the story. Yeah. The way you lay out the panels, you create suspense by drawing things out a little bit, or you pack in a lot of things, and people like, you are controlling time and how the reader perceives that.
Yep.
Okay. This conversation is getting so fascinating. I'm going to bring Nina on it now, so that we've got the three of us. Nina, bang, there you are. Hello, Nina. Thank you for coming back and joining. Okay, so now we've got three of us on the screen now. There's so many things that I would like to jump into in terms of asking you guys, like, what sort of, like, if you could pick like a couple of things each, what sort of things you keep in mind when you are trying to tell a story that's concentrating, trying to make a sketch with a very strong story element. So let's go Pedro first. Couple of things.
Okay, I would say contrasts. Contrast is essential, like what we were discussing, and try to use the people. I mean, if you sketch people, or if you're sketching inanimate objects, try to make them like the avatars of the viewer. So, like, if you're sketching other persons, then of course you're not sketching yourself in the sketch, but the person that you're sketching has to be like the avatar of the person that is going to look at your sketch. So the person has to feel that they're in the sketch, so to speak. So using like
the viewer,
third person,
like you're drawing.
Yeah, exactly. Like third person viewers, like in a really like the Dostoevsky guy was showing. Like suddenly people are confused. Suddenly people are assuming that they are that guy, and they're walking into the sketch, so to speak. That's a really good device, I guess.
Okay.
So third person.
What would you say? A couple of things.
I think Pedro stole one of my words. Like contrasts is, of course, an obvious thing, and then I think variation as well. Like you are the, as you said before, that you're as the sketcher, you decide the story, right? So if you can keep like a focus clear and then find a variation, in lines or colors, so that it's obvious where the focus is in the sketch. I like that, at least.
I think that's a great idea. Yes, how to make the focus clear, because like you're really like bringing the reader along, and even if it's an urban sketch, but there is a story you're trying to tell. So how do you make that bit really clear? Okay, let's talk a little bit about sequential work and how you convey that in the sketch again. So, Pedro, this is one of your examples.
Yep.
Talk us through how you add all these elements in to create your story.
Well, I was just experimenting a little bit with different kinds of layouts because this was a really good sketchbook, like 100% cotton. So I didn't want to waste an inch of the pages. So I just this was a summer holidays this year. I spent with a few friends down south, and I was carrying around the masking tape. So I just decided, okay, let's just use the spread as much as I can, and try to record a single day. And I tried to record a single day in a single spread. And I used the masking tape just to mask out different moments of the day.
And you use that technique, that negative space, to carve out panels.
Yeah, exactly. The previous page has square panels. This one I was experimenting with triangles. It was a little bit like a random experience, but it kind of worked out nicely. Or I mean, by previously masking, okay, like let's do triangles. So then when you choose the viewpoint, you have to choose something that is going to fit in that triangle. So that's like an extra challenge that you can present yourself.
The composition, and this is just like what Nina was talking about as well. This an establishing shot. You've got variety going on there.
You got a few characters as well.
Yeah, and characters,
including one sketcher in the end there.
Oh yes, there's a sketcher in there as well. That's true. Okay, Nina, let's take a look at this particular bit of information that you'd like to explain a little bit about camera shots and all that. I think this would be a really great idea to help. I don't think many viewers understand, so this would be one way to explain how to use the camera shot thing to tell it.
Yeah, so there are different camera shot sizes, and this is like in photography and in filmmaking, and these are not all of them. There are more terminology around this, but I think it's a good start, like long shot, wide shot, often used as an establishment shot in movies. Full shot and middle shot is like the names of those, they refer to people. Full shot, you can see the whole people. Middle shot, you get a little closer, so you see half the person. And obviously close up and extreme close up. You can do that with, even if you don't have people around, you can still like think like that, right? So you get moving closer sometimes. And to vary those and combine them in different ways, I think it's a good way. And then I made this like what the difference between objective camera and point of view camera. It's my little take on it. But so the objective camera is where you just record everything you see. And point of view camera, to me, in sketching, is where you can start like moving around things and choosing what you look at and all that. So it's like the camera is in your eyes. And of course, the eye level, like in one of Pedro's, this building, the 3-point perspective things, that would be like a low angle camera then. So that's a lot of things speak to each other in movie making and comics, of course. So there's a lot of thinking that's alike. And then if you pan the camera, like you have the camera standing still, but you pan it around, you get a panorama thing. If you sketch that would be like a 180-degree perspective, sort of. Right. You see the whole thing in front of you. While trucking is when you move the camera, it doesn't turn. You just move it from left to right, right to left, or wherever.
Right.
So you don't get this skewed perspective, which is also kind of fun to play with. Yeah, that's it.
Where that's
Yeah.
truck in, truck left and truck right. Yes.
So along a street, those two techniques would bring very different perspectives into, if you draw like a street view, for instance.
Right.
And a dolly is not the same thing as zooming. Zooming is what you do with the lens on the camera, right? You move close into one object maybe. But dollying is what I've been playing a lot with, like moving through space, moving the camera through space. It's really fun to try to think like that when you draw. And then tilting, like upwards and downwards. Yeah.
And, you tilt
and there are loads more terminology here. These are just like a simple start, but still, these are fun to keep in your head when I'm out sketching. I think there's.
Yep. Cinematography 101 for urban sketchers.
Yeah.
Sign up for the workshop now. Okay. Let's take another look at an example you have with, like, this is a fascinating sketch. And was this also using the dolly?
No, this was like the establishing shot is me just sitting still drawing. So you get a feeling of where we are in a living room, probably, maybe.
Right.
And then I tried the point of view camera on this armchair. So walking around it and drawing it from different angles. And in this case, this was just like an exercise. I did it all in the same image, which is of course messy, but it's really fun to do. It's like layering different different ways of looking, I think. Fun to play with too.
And it makes an interesting drawing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, I want to see all your faces again, because I got a couple. I mean, I have some more questions for you. Like, you've talked to us about so many different ways to approach things, whether it's like from a comic style point of view, comic sequential art point of view, or film. Do either of you use storyboarding to plan your sketches? And if not, what do you use? So if you use it or if you don't use it, Pedro.
Well, when I teach, I always encourage my students to use thumbnailing.
Okay,
just to explore the composition a little bit. So like in the corner, even if you incorporate it into the same sketch, it's like it's part of the sketch. You have that opportunity, but not so much as storyboarding. No, not for the action at least. Or maybe I just mentally storyboard and I don't actually storyboard.
Okay. Yeah. And what about you, Nina? Do you storyboard?
No, I certainly would if I was making a serious attempt to make a comic or like a film. But for sketching, and thumbnailing is a really good idea for trying out composition. But when I go out sketching, it's more of an adventure. It's more like I can have these, like, for now, I use these movie references all the time when I go out and sketch, but I don't want to decide beforehand what ends up on my page. So I was like, okay, I'll try to think like that, and then I'll go out and see what happens on the page. So no storyboarding, no.
Right. Okay.
That's really good. You know, that actually reminds me of something that I thought of seeing, which is like picking up on that documentary thing. Like urban sketching is documentary, and comics is fiction film. A documentary is not storyboarded. So usually or never. I mean, you just pick a theme. You plan it out as much as you can, but it's not scripted. So the actors are real people. So you just film away and hope to get a story in the end. So
but you have an idea which characters you'd like to feature. So yes, it's not storyboarding as in predetermining what the story is, because I guess that's what's really fun about urban sketching is you have an idea. I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go to a market. Then I look for the story. Then I capture that. But if you let's take travel sketching, for instance, because you're also telling a story. Like before you go to a new city, do you think like, I'm going to this city, let's say Porto, because we were all there. At least, I mean, the four of us were there. Do you do some research beforehand to say, okay, these are areas of a city, and these are my sketch because it's going to represent my view of the entire city? Do you have a list of that? And that's a kind of a storyboard.
Not usually for me. I read up on a place that I'm going to visit because I like history, and it's always interesting to know stuff about the place that you're going to. But I usually can't decide what's most interesting until I get there, like where I want to go, and anyway, when you start sketching, anything is interesting. So, you can sketch right outside the hotel door or wherever you're staying. It's still going to be interesting to sketch.
Yeah, I remember, and we did in Chicago, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I remember a few of us sitting in a cafe and then drawing those those railway lines, the elevated railway lines, which is fascinating too. Okay, all right, that's all good and fine. All right, let's talk about emotion, capturing emotion and drama. Tips, one tip each from both of you. So Pedro first.
Okay.
What's a tip for capturing drama and emotion?
I would maybe pick up on that expression thing, that facial expression thing. When I'm sketching a lot of people, I spend a lot of time observing them. That sounds creepy now. This is we're in a creepy territory now. Okay, I spend a lot of time observing, studying the person. Well, not a lot of time, but enough time so that you can see what the main expressions are like the most. The most expressive feature of that person is. Is it the smile? Is it like a scratching the nose, or is it like a blinking or whatever? And then that's it. You nail that one, and that's characterized.
Okay.
That person's characterized.
And I'm just curious, how far are you? How far are you when you draw people? Because I'm like really far. I need glasses to read, but I can see far away, so I don't want the hassle of someone's like 10 feet away and they're like, oh, what are you doing? So I do my people sketching from quite a distance. What about you?
Well, from all distances, from like table dinner, like face to face, like 1 meter away.
Yeah, that's with friends. Okay.
Yeah. That's between friends, of course.
Strangers. How far
strangers, I've been pretty close, especially in crowded subways.
Okay.
I used to use my commute a lot to practice my sketch. So it was like half an hour a day of subway sketching, and that's really cool because people are completely lost on their phones and whatnot.
That's true.
And so we can get like really close up sketches of people without them even realizing.
That's true too. Okay, Nina, capturing drama
and emotion. I think I go for the colors then. Like difference between warm and cold colors or darks and lights and so on, to emphasize something, like depending on if it's a mean feeling or a cozy atmosphere. You can work with the colors a lot.
Yeah. Okay, that's true too. Okay, all right. Let's go then from the point of view of Pedro. You're going to talk about comics, and Nina, you're going to be talking about film. The next time that an urban sketcher picks up a comic book, Pedro, what kind of advice would you give to them? Like, what should they pay attention to when they're looking at a comic, especially like a really good graphic novel sometimes? I mean, the artwork blows you away, and the way they tell the stories, there's so many things you could learn from them. So what advice would you give to an urban sketcher to start to learn from these things? What should they start paying attention to first? And Nina, you got the same question for film, so give it some thought.
All right. All right. So that's a tough one. The first thing is just read the story and just read throughout it and have fun. Have fun with it. Then on the second reading, you can study a little bit about how, like for instance, like different authors. You can study different authors in different ways. For instance, if I was to speak about this Hugo Pratt guy, I would definitely pay attention to the shading of characters, like how can he quickly convey like shadow and light and volume just by having a brush stroke. One other thing that I would advise paying attention to a lot is the layout of the page, which is something that is unique to comic books. So, like in film, you have a sequence of images, and in photography, you have different photographies. But in comic books is the only medium where you have like a lot of sketches in one single place, in one single page, right. And most authors don't pay a lot of attention to this, but there are a few authors who do a really awesome composition of all the sketches, and like you read the panels individually, but then you can also read the page as a whole, and that's really precious. That's really educational.
Excellent advice. All right, Nina. So, what would your advice be for film?
First of all, like I'm the kind of film viewer who gets lost in the story, because if it's a good movie, you just zoom in and I'm in there in the story. So first watch the movie and enjoy it. But then once you've done that, you can watch it again and start looking at what do they do with the camera. I mean, like establishing shots, like the example we showed before with Blade Runner, you don't always find establishing shots only in the beginning, and they're in the whole movie here and there when you change the environment in the story and all that. How do they do that? In which order do they do it? I mean, if you see, for instance, you see two people, you see a person texting someone on a phone, and then you see someone else in the next image texting someone else, and then you see the first person is in a city and then the other is in a forest. You know that they're probably longing for each other or something. But if you see the person texting another, and then you see the other one answering, and then you see they're in the same sofa, that's going to tell another story, right? So it's important like what order you place these images, and you can surprise people by putting the sofa image at the end, not at the beginning. So right. Suddenly these two people are longing to be somewhere else, like with each other. So you can watch what they're doing with the camera and the cuts, like how they move. Because like in comics, a lot of the important stuff happens in between the scenes, like in the cuts, like in the gutters of comics. It's a lot of things happening there that we just read into. So that's always interesting.
Okay. Wow. There is so much to unpack here, people. I hope you're paying attention and taking good notes. So I personally also draw from all these things. And like if I'm forced to watch a film or even a TV show that I'm not really interested in, I'll pay attention to how they tell the story or how they create a particular emotion or something like that. So, I mean, you can make lemonade, in any sort of situation. But yes, I love all these points. All right. Ludi, do we have any particular questions from the audience that we can highlight? Okay, well, did you say funneling? What is that, please? Asks Lynn. Did anyone say funneling?
Funneling, no.
I don't remember hearing funneling. Okay. So no, I didn't hear anything about funnels. All right, Ludi, well, if there are questions from, Alvin is asking, how can you sketch in the snow when the weather is freezing?
I don't have that problem. Maybe tell you.
I'd say just wear as much clothes as you can, much more than you think you need, because if you're out walking, you'll keep warm, but out drawing, you'll get cold like that. So you have to really dress in layers and wear mittens, and you're good to go.
Okay. Do you find that your sensitivity is somewhat reduced? Like in a cold situation when I'm wearing gloves to draw, I find my hand doesn't behave the way that I want it to. What is your advice for that?
I do that too. I get the same thing. And I try to, I usually have to change my tools because ink liners and fountain pens, they freeze actually. Mm-hmm. So you draw 5 lines and then, no color in the pen. That's a disappointment. So I usually move to pencils. And then watercolors, if I'm brave enough to be out long enough to use colors as well, then I mix some alcohol in the water watercolor water. So then it doesn't freeze immediately on the page, because that's also quite annoying. So
I can imagine.
There are tricks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool tricks. Ludi, keep pulling them up when you see them. And right now, I also, okay. From Arlene, do you also mix vodka with your watercolor?
Yes, I do.
White freezing.
Cheapest kind.
Not with the watercolor. Come on.
Yeah.
Vodka and
That's just a waste.
It's a waste of vodka.
No, but actually, I think the main point there is that you have to have uncolored and there can't be any sweetener or taste, aromas or colors in the alcohol, because then you ruin the paints. So vodka is a good choice.
Okay. All right. Will either of you be offering workshops in the future?
I
No
hope
doubt.
so. Yeah.
Definitely in the future, but how soon? I don't know.
That's it.
Okay. All right. So while we're waiting for more questions, also, I'd just like to share the screen to show also a couple of references for those of you who are interested to find out more about how comics and sequential are and how you can learn for some of these things. So take a quick screenshot if you'd like. Would one of you like to talk about these titles? Do you know them?
I've used them both. Actually, the Will Eisner ones, I just got them, so I'm reading them right now. They are available at least in digital form now. And the Understanding Comics is a classic for telling stories in comics. It's a wonderful book, actually. So yeah, those are really, really good ones, I think.
Yeah, I'm just reading Scott McCloud as well, Understanding Comics. But one there was one part of it that was actually quite resonated with me, which was the transitions, the transition section, where he explains the 6 kinds of transitions between panels. Mm-hmm. So different things in between one panel and the other, different things might be happening. Time might be happening, or different place, or an action, a cause and a consequence. And the ones that most draw attention to me are action to action. So that's very common in, for instance, American comics, where you have something happening all the time, and you have like a cause and consequence. So the later panel is always the consequence of the original panel. And then you have something which is called aspect to aspects, which kind of relates a little bit more to urban sketching, which is found mostly in Japanese comics, where you have a transition from panel to panel, but the time doesn't matter. Chronological order doesn't matter. It's just like you're contemplating, and I get a lot of that from your sketches, Nina, that you're just contemplating on different scenes without time mattering. The order doesn't matter. It's just like, is this first? Is this last? Is this doesn't really? It's just you're contemplating that area or that marketplace or whatever it is that you're sketching, and that's aspect to aspect. It's another transition that Scott McCloud approaches.
Super. Lots of good stuff there. Okay, time is running on, and it is time to talk about our challenge of the week. All right, so let's unpack that. Nina, tell us what's happening and what you'd like the audience to do.
Yeah, okay, so this was me working at home again, the coffee, important stuff during the workday. So walking through the apartment to the stove where I make my coffee. And I decided in this case to sort of clarify the way to read the sketch with these red arrows. You can do that in different ways, I guess, but this was my take on it. And it landed, in the end, it lands on the knob on the stove, right, where you start the heat. So, so this is like, I followed my need for this beverage. I recorded it in drawing from observation.
Yeah, let's take a closer look at the full drawing, and this is something you can find on Nina's Instagram if you'd like to take a closer look.
Yeah.
But just a summary of the challenge again is to find your favorite beverage, whatever it may be, no judgment, pandemic times, and think about this. So that mug of beverage is the character that you're going to talk about. So track it. Where does it go? Document your day. Where does it go with you? Whether it's in your home, or if it's a cup of coffee in a thermos that you make and then you take out on a walk with you. Show us what that's like. Tell that story. Okay, so this is yes, and think about all those things that our wonderful guests have brought to your attention. Like how do you frame that? What point of view? What camera angle? If you're going to think camera angles, what is your establishing shot, etc. How do you close in and go into all that? All right, we've got also an example from Pedro. So Pedro, talk us through this one. And how
it's more or less the same thing. So follow all around the your favorite beverage. In this case, it's beer. And I've been ordering beer to arrive at my doorstep now. So, and it's a local craft beer, a regional craft beer. That I actually designed the labels for this one, so it's like a little watercolory thing. And they deliver it. They deliver it home. The difference here between to Nina's sketch is that. Instead of the whole thing being a whole sketch, like the whole same space, it's like it's in panels basically. It's like a comic book take on that, on the same theme. So you have the arrival of the beer, you have the beer standing there, and then packed as much beer as I could in the fridge, and then for some reason I have this weird moose Norwegian moose. The bottle opener, which I don't know where it came from.
That's an important difference between you and me, because you have a moose in your kitchen and I don't.
And that's it. And then you have the enjoyment of the beer while watching Cobra Kai.
Okay.
That's my girlfriend there.
That sounds good. Again, ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's watching, this is the challenge of the week. Remember to hashtag USkTalks challenge, hashtag Nina as well as Pedro. And with that, again, this is the information, the Instagram handles for Nina and Pedro. Grab that if you need to. And wow, with that, we come to the end of our show for this week. Thank you so much, Nina and Pedro. You've given us so much good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. You're an awesome host, man.
Oh. Yeah, really. And thanks to everyone who joined in. I actually saw I saw a lot of friends in there saying hi. It's not so easy to concentrate on the comments when you have this amazing host taking your concentration all the time.
We're just chatting.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my mug. So if you have your mug, then this is the time of the show where we say thank you so much. Skål. Oh, I just need to clarify. Skål, is it only for alcohol, or can you do it that with anything?
Yeah, you can do it with anything.
Okay.
It's often alcohol, but yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Skål it is then. I hope to see you guys again soon and sketch together, and then we'll skål in person. Thank you, Nina and Pedro.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Rob and Nina.
Okay. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of another episode of USkTalks. I hope you had a good time. I hope you felt that you learned quite a bit. Join the challenge. If you have not yet, please follow and subscribe Urban Sketchers and this channel. Share your IG stories. Share your posts, hashtag USkTalks challenge, so that we can find you and the entire team. We all love seeing what you do. So please, tag USkTalks challenge and have fun. Remember to tag our hosts. Stay safe, stay well. For those of you who tuned in late, happy Chinese Lunar New Year, and also happy Valentine's Day. Have fun sketching. Stay safe, people, and we will see you as usual next week with another awesome show. Have a great week.